Hi, I'm Sam. I'm the co-founder of Kingdom Impact Lab and the steward of the L.I.G.H.T framework. In this video, I am going to share with you the story behind L.I.G.H.T, how I was given the framework, but more precisely where I struggled in my life before without the L.I.G.H.T framework, and my former life was dominated by the pursuit of money, both for my clients and for myself. And yeah, let me talk through it. I don't think anyone will watch the video, so it doesn't matter if I go on side tangents and whatnot, because the purpose of me doing these videos is simply to talk through the ideas, to give myself clarity in my own mind, so that I'm then able to articulate quickly, concisely and precisely to people that I interact with. So for me, this is my practice and training ground. So if anyone is watching, forgive me if I tend to be a little bit long-winded on things, but hey, let's get started. So my story started out where, for most of my life, I was an atheist. I grew up in an environment that was not conducive to religion. My background is in areas of deprivation. My area in England was once known for its industry, manufacturing, steelworks, coal mines, foundries, all of these sort of things. And the way that things work was that you would have the same job as your father, and your father would have the same job as his father, and probably work in the same factory in the same place, kind of thing. And then all of a sudden these shut, and then a generation later is when I'm born, and people are lost. People don't really have jobs, and it just kind of goes downhill. So the environment that I was in was not exactly conducive to any kind of faith. In fact, I was actively mocking it and actively going against it, and that's what kind of led me on the path to rejecting Christianity for most of my life. And we'll fast forward with all of that context there to when I started to train as a copywriter. In particular, I trained as a direct response copywriter, which means that I used words, sentences, paragraphs, the written language in order to get the reader, the recipient, to take the next step in a sequence of steps designed to get them basically to buy the product or service. And so each piece of writing would have a specific goal, a specific aim, which would basically be to get the person to take the next step, and then the next asset within this sequence would be designed to get them to take the next step, and so on and so forth. And sometimes all of this would be written sequentially within a sales letter or within a video sales letter following a particular sequence, where you would go through you'd have the emotional hook to get someone interested. You'd state the problem, you'd agitate the problem, you'd provide the solution, and so on and so forth. It followed a specific sequence, or it would be like a much more sophisticated approach, which would follow the sales cycle of the typical buyer within a company. And so when my speciality was helping clients with high ticket offers that focused on high trust relationships in order for their business to operate and function profitably, more so than high volume, low price. And the longer sort of sequence of things would be that, let's say you've got a $5,000 offer, and it might be between 3 to 6 months on average from when someone first encounters your business through an ad or through wherever it is, to eventually going through that process of actually becoming a buyer. And so The direct response copywriting approach here is that you would map out this big sort of journey, optimize the different stages of where people are within their buying journey, and each specific part of the writing would be to get them to take the next step, the next step, the next step kind of thing. And so that was essentially what I did. And so that's how I trained. And for someone who has always really been obsessed with learning, understanding, seeking the truth, what I did was I just jumped into all of the books I could read, all of the information I could read on copywriting, learning how to do it. I learned from the best copywriters out there at the time. I used to study. Anyone in copywriting would know the names like Gary Halbert, John Carlton, Gary Benson-Wenger, all of these people which I learned from. I studied them. I spent hundreds, thousands of hours studying throughout the years in order to understand the craft that I was doing. Well, the essence of everything that I learned, both from studying, reading, investing in training programs from coaches, is all focused on one essential aspect, and that is to get someone to make a sale. Now, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with selling, with getting people to buy things, but when the entire focus of everything that you learn is on getting the sale at all costs, it sort of puts you in a position at some points where you would choose to do something that you know deep down is not the right thing to do, because it will increase the likelihood of someone making a sale, so you would receive your revenue for doing it. And rather than a perfect example, we live here near the beach, and unfortunately that wherever tourism increases, you have all the negative aspects of that as well. And so one of the negative aspects of where we live is they have paddleboarding in the sea. And so you then have a bunch of touts that literally form a big crowd around the entrance to the beach, and when someone gets out of Grab our version of Uber, 15 of them run and swarm them, trying to get them to go on the paddleboard. Well, around this time, around a year ago, there was a crocodile spotted in the water. Crocodiles are a common thing where we are. It is not uncommon to hear of people getting killed by crocodiles where we live. It's something that happens pretty frequently, and you have the lifeguards that are up and down the beach. I'm not sure what the technical name is, but they're the people that are on the beach to make sure everything's okay, and then going around telling people don't go in the water, there's a crocodile there. We saw the crocodile here in this space, this morning. We know it's there, we haven't seen it. Despite this, all of the people selling the water sports were still getting the tourists in the water, including families with young kids out on paddleboards in the water, where there's a crocodile swimming around where we know the people that live here that the crocodiles do eat people and kill people. And so I think one of these paddleboarding sessions is maybe $20. So you would assume that the commission that these touts would get would be maybe $2 per person that they sign up. And so then getting people in the water, making jokes about, there's a crocodile here and whatnot, for the sake of $2 commission, having kids in the water, that is an example of where you do everything focused on money, and how it would lead your actions to be motivated by something that goes against what you know is right. And the reason why I mention that as an example is because there was a crocodile sighted on the beach in the water recently, again in the last few weeks. This time they did not capture it. And so we know there's crocodiles swimming around, but yet nothing gets done because they're still having the tourists in the water. This is how little people care about other humans when money is involved. And so the point I'm trying to make is that my entire training, because of the background of where I'm at in direct response copywriting, is all about getting that sale at all costs. And it put me in situations where I committed what I can now look back in hindsight and say that my own business sins in order to generate revenue for a client to justify my fee from them. And that just wasn't the right thing to do, because when you're selling high ticket offers, you are selling the outcome that people would get. And naturally, not everyone is going to be the right fit for your high ticket offer, whether it's a service, a coaching program, consulting, whatever it is, done for you, done with you. Not everyone is going to get the result that you promised. And whenever a client was struggling financially because they had to hit their targets, and often case that's all it was, is that they have arbitrary quarterly targets that they want to aim for, and so this month we need to have a few more sales in order to hit our targets. This is when I came up with what I used to think is the brilliant idea and come up with this new promotion, using all my training as a direct response copywriter to know how to capture people at the very early stage of their journey with the business, and what to do then to get them super interested in order to join like a workshop, a live event. And then we know that if someone attends for a live event that they're a little bit more engaged, and I then know how to make the live event, the live workshop engaging, and how to get people interested in what they do, and feel engaged. And then you make them an offer that they can't refuse, and then we came up with various things like payment plans and pay as you earn and all of this stuff, in order to get people to sign up and to commit to joining the program, so that then the company generates the revenue. Well, the reality of the situation is that I absolutely got people to sign up and join their programs that did not get the results that were promised, in order for the client to generate the revenue, in order for me to justify my fee. Sure, it's not as dramatic as getting people in the water where saltwater crocodiles are swimming around in order to make $1 or $2 in commission, but the fact of the matter is that when your entire worldview and mindset is based on money as your guiding principle, that's where all the problems kind of start. And there's inconsistency then between the way that we as Christians would want to integrate our faith if money is the only goal that we're pursuing. Because as it says, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve both money and God. Likewise, what Carl Jung said, the famous psychologist, that, this is a paraphrase, that what you put as your North Star becomes your God, whether you're aware of it or not. And for me, I can look back now and I can admit that I did have money as my God, so to speak, and I idolized it, and my life went downhill as a result of it. Not immediately, but afterwards. The specific turning point for me was after we had achieved a degree of financial security, which for us meant that we were no longer under pressure to make money this month to pay the bills for this month. We had a little bit of wiggle room, and when we got more and more wiggle room and we knew that we no longer have to pursue money at all costs in order to pay the bills and pay the rent and pay this and pay that, that's when it no longer became as exciting to pursue. And that's what started me on my quest to find meaning in what I was doing and the work that I was doing. Because I've always grown up I always had what I wanted growing up, but it's not like we came from a wealthy background. We never really had all of the expensive things and all the luxuries. We always had food on the table, unlike a lot of other people that I knew. But money was something that was not in abundance. And when we achieve that degree of security, the motivation to keep pursuing it just to get more and more kind of diminished and diminished and diminished. And that's when I started to try to inject part of my personality, part of my values into what I was doing, thinking that I'd be able to give people this additional level of service, this higher quality and higher level of value from what I did. And maybe in the present moment, when I was doing it, they valued it. But after the present moment had passed and they went back, the clients I work with went back to their, reviewing the things at the end of a month, a quarter, whatever it is, all of it went out of the window and they completely forgot about it, because the only thing that mattered was their bottom line and their profit margins. And this I found to be extremely discouraging, and this was probably the turning point of where things in my career as a direct response copywriter and my marketing agency just went downhill. And it was because I was trying to offer sort of personality and transformation and genuinely wanting to help people into relationships that were built on the foundation of being purely transactional. And so here are a few examples of what I experienced as a result of this. And then just to be clear, to define what this situation is. This is me attracting clients using language to get them guaranteed return on investments, make this much money back, pay as you profit, all of these things. So the start of the conversation that I had with these clients is always about money. So everything that happened afterwards was set on the precedent of money, which is transactional. And then when I came to try to inject other things into the relationship, into the working relationship, the business contract, the service I provided, it was not valued, because all of these extra things that I did and went the extra mile for, if it did not directly increase their bottom line in a specific and measurable way, it was not considered value against the benchmark of the transactional targets of what they compared my performance to. In essence, they essentially just commoditized me. And I'm not saying this is the fault of the clients, because I absolutely did the same, if not worse, to people that I had on my team as a result of this, especially when things got tough. So let me give you a few examples of what happens when you work in a transactional environment. So for me, I work with one client, long-term client, work with them for I don't know, I can't remember, maybe 12 months. And what I was doing was I was helping them use their email list in order to get book calls for their high ticket offer, basically. Their business model predominantly run on running Google Ads to book a call. They focused entirely on the discovery and having on the discovery through the ads, and then having that first conversation, and then specifically following up with people that had a sales call. They had a sales team to do all of this. But they also collected the email address of everyone who booked a call or committed to booking a call but didn't show up, and without getting into the technical details. So we had 50, 60,000 people on their email list, in addition to other ways of getting it, but they did nothing with these people. So I came in and built the relationships with the people that they had on their email list over a long period of time, which then led to an additional, I forgot, on average, if I was to make a guess, looking back without looking at the data, they probably made on average an extra 10 sales of their high ticket offer per month as a result of working with me. And I think their high ticket offer was, they had a couple, so on average maybe 5,000 per offer. So they were making an extra $50,000 per month as a result of me doing their email list. Now, bearing in mind that they didn't have to pay for the cost per acquisition, which, if I remember correctly, was about $800 to $900 back then for a $5,000 sale, which is, you know, pretty high. So the profit that they would generate from the sales from their existing email list is actually higher than the new people. And I got this one client, and he came back with a testimonial for me, which said, and this is a quote from the testimonial, that the best month from Sam, he generated $250,000 in new revenue in a single month. And so this is not to brag or anything about what I did, but just to set the context about where I was at with this client and this relationship. Vastly exceeding my expectations and the promises that I gave to them. And then one day, completely unexpectedly and out of the blue, they terminated the contract. They said at the end of the month, we'll pay you for the end of the month, but we're not going to continue working with you. After a bit of discussion, the reason for that is because that my performance is determined by the performance of the sales team, because I'm generating booked calls for them. I'm sending qualified prospects to them for the sales team to have a conversation. And so if the sales team is underperforming, it means they get fewer sales from my emails that I've sent them. Yes, it also could mean that a lot of the people that I sent them were booking calls because of the tactics I was using just to get people to book a call might not have been the highest quality prospects for them to have a conversation with. That's a factor too. But in this case, it wasn't. The answer was that, well, it takes an average of 2 months or so in order to get a sale from someone after they've booked a call. It's now February, and because it was Christmas, the sales team were in Christmas mode and they weren't taking the sales calls as seriously, and the conversions on the sales calls dropped substantially. And because we have, you know, we operate with 90% expenses compared to the revenue that we make, you know, because of that, we're now in the red. And so, since you're one of our biggest expenses and you're a contractor, we need to get rid of you so we can reduce our expenses to get back in the green, rather than letting go some of our permanent staff. Okay, fair enough. I wasn't happy with it at the time, but fair enough, kind of thing. But you look at kind of what happened, that all of this was entirely transactional, despite all of the things that I did for them in terms of generating revenue. Just like that, over, gone, finished. Nothing wrong, nothing to do with the client. He was a great client, had a great experience and a great time with him. But that's just the reality of what happens in transactional relationships. There's no loyalty, there's no underlying connection. They don't value the extra stuff you do outside of the present moment, because when they actually look back at what they're measuring your performance against, it's all transactional. Another example was I was working with someone, did my typical low price to start off with and then increase the price afterwards after I'd generated them some results. And so I basically agreed a 3-month program, a 3-month service with this client, done for you service, you know, nurture sequence going out over 90 days to build relationships, to build these connections, to generate conversations, all of these different things. I then gave him like a 2-month period afterwards in order to have ongoing support at no cost to make sure it works, to iron out any things, because the system I was building in was like a nurture sequence that you can automate. So in total, if I remember correctly, probably about 5 months of my time for the fee. Well, the beauty of this is that it's something that if I was given all of the right information and things did not change with the client about what the client wanted and needed, I could have got the project done in 2 weeks, implemented it, and then basically the 2-month support would be from starting the first email until the end of it. And then the actual support after it's implemented is relatively minimal. It's just troubleshooting, it's problem solving. You say, hey, he's come up with this problem, how do I overcome this? And then I just send a voice note and tell him what to do. Well, because this client kept changing his mind and moving in different directions and essentially focusing on lower order priorities and taking every opportunity that came across his lap, our project was, what I was doing for him was delayed and delayed and delayed. And then every couple of weeks I had to have a call with him in order to recalibrate and get back on focus and talk to him and explain things again, taking so much of my time. While I was doing this, whenever he had a problem, while this contract was ongoing, I'd help him, I'd coach him, I'd mentor him through it, I'd explain things, I'd give him ideas. When he had a pretty bad email off someone from like a response where, I don't know, 30% of the words in this email was swear words, he was demotivated, he wanted to stop. I kind of coached him through that situation a little bit so he had a different perspective, all of these different things. And well, the project dragged on and it then reached a point where my second son was going to be born soon. We knew when he was going to be born, and I was not prepared to have ongoing support and to do a project with someone in the first couple of months with a newborn baby, because you don't know, you've got a newborn baby, you can't really plan to do much else, and I didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver kind of thing because of my circumstances. My circumstances are kind of irrelevant when I promise a result to a client kind of thing. My problems are not more important than the result for the client. And so I reached a point where I had to call it and say that, look, you've moved in so many different directions, you can't, I don't think this service that we agreed on, this offer that we agreed on, is going to give you the results because you've now moved, you've kind of changed direction and you need to focus on this to do it. Plus, I was honest and transparent that I don't want to be beholden to a contract when I've got a newborn. And I said that because this is dragged on, I would like to propose that you would pay me 50% of the outstanding fee just to cover the time and the expenses that I've had on over these several months of, in a nice way I said, waiting around on you. But again, it's entirely up to you, whatever. And I thought, well, this is the right thing to do, this is integrity. I could have literally written the emails and the sequence and everything that I needed to give him as per the deliverables in like an hour and a half. But I knew he wouldn't implement it. I knew he wouldn't get the results, so that's where I stopped. He didn't pay me. He wasn't a bad guy or anything, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with him. He's a great guy. I'd actually got on with him quite well. But his response was, quote, Sam, all of these extra things are nice, but I'm paying you for deliverables. You haven't delivered me the deliverables, and therefore I'm not going to pay you. The point of that story was that I tried to inject all of these added value and benefit in coaching and mentorship and helping him through and giving him ideas and all of his support. But because everything started off on a transactional on a transaction agreement, that set the precedent for everything else that followed afterwards. And then my performance and what I gave him was then measured against that transactional anchor, so to speak. Did not end well. The third, well, in both of those occasions, that despite bad things appearing to happen to me, by me having integrity in the situations, well, it didn't actually, because it worked out much better for me. With the first client, I renegotiated the terms of our agreement where they paid me a lower rate, but for 80% of the less work. So I actually got paid substantially more per unit of time with the client than I did with the higher monthly fee. And then with the second example, he he basically inspired me and gave me confidence that it's okay to take a baby on a plane, especially if I'm 2 or 3 months old, because it's pretty easy, all they do is sleep. And then my parents bought us flight tickets back to the UK so they could meet the baby, which was more than the outstanding balance of what this client told me. So on both occasions, it worked out well for me for doing the right thing. And so another example, this is going back a little bit further, before I was doing copywriting. And so I was doing a lot of travel writing at the time, because we traveled a lot. And I worked for a company which, as much as I want to name and shame them, I don't think that's the right thing to do. And well, they basically made me sign an agreement to commit to writing 30 articles per month as an ongoing basis. I was obligated to provide them with 30 high quality articles, which would require basically an unlimited amount of editing if it did not meet their standards. And this at the time was part of a SEO content strategy, whatever it was, I'm not sure. And well, I did. And because I was obligated to write 30 articles per month for them, essentially one per day, plus all the edits and whatnot afterwards, it was hard to try to find other clients and other projects to work on, because it was time consuming, and you have obligations and responsibilities, especially the case when we were traveling a lot back then. And so if you're traveling and you're catching buses and trains to different places, that you only have a finite amount of time in order to do the paid work, and so you can't take on too many clients at once, kind of thing. And so all of this happened, and I did that for a long time with them, several months, maybe close to a year. And then this was just bad timing, because my grandmother was terminally ill with cancer. She died, and I think it was of the morning of her funeral when this company sent an email out saying, oh, by the way, but the funeral was like the 22nd, 23rd of the month of August, I think it was, or September, I can't remember, but it was close to the end of the month. And we just received an email from the person that was managing the writers that said, by the end of the month, we're going to relieve you of your services. Thank you for everything, you're no longer required. And that just pretty much happened to all the writers there. And the person that was managing us, which was sort of, there was multiple managers, managing countless writers and things, and they were shocked and they couldn't understand it as well. And it was simply one of these things that, okay, we've got a target of the number of articles that we want on our website by this time frame. When they achieved it, we don't want any more. Goodbye. And that was really bad. It was really bad at the time, because I'd never been treated in a way quite as bad as that before. And so again, that is what happens in a transactional kind of setting. And that's where I was the recipient of people treating me like nothing more than a cost per article, or a cost per word, or it was, this particular business, they wanted 1,000 word articles, and they paid $50 per article. And so you look at it and you can calculate the value that they placed on what you contributed to them, and they value nothing more than what than the words that you produced. Well, I don't think that company's been doing particularly well, and I don't think they've achieved the targets of what they wanted to achieve. So again, it kind of works out, doesn't it? And so I'm not going to talk about all of the things of where I've been a victim, because I most certainly have not just been a victim. I have done it to other people as well. And so these would be my sins as a result of operating in a transactional kind of setting. And so, before I talk about what all the things that I've done bad in the past as a result of me operating out of a 100% transactional mindset, and let me explain the reason behind it. And this has taken me a long time to figure out the reason, and I think it's accurate. And so I'd just like to try to articulate why I think I behaved that way, despite me experiencing all of those things that I've mentioned before, and many, many more. Yet I still did exactly the same, if not worse, to people within my sphere of influence. And so it's kind of one of these things where when people do it to you, it's so bad, but then you're not even aware of it when you're doing it to other people, even though it might be worse. And so I've been thinking a lot about that because I want to avoid making that mistake again in the future. And I think this awareness of the fact that I've lived through it for 10 years, I've experienced it myself as a recipient, and I've been perpetrating this as well without my knowledge or intention. I think this is where it gives me the credibility moving forward, and why I'm so passionate about finding a solution. And so the reason for me is that I think the reason for my sins while I was operating in an entirely transactional kind of setting, where my North Star was money. Money would mean getting a return on investment for a client, the amount of money that I make per month, whatever. As an umbrella term, the North Star is money. There's nothing wrong with wanting money. There's nothing wrong with having money. There's nothing wrong with wanting to increase your wealth. The problems come with the love of money. It says in the Bible, in plenty places, I can't quote exactly where, but it says that the love of money is the root of all evil, which I agree. I've lived it. And I think for me, the reason for me is that when your guiding principle, the North Star of what you do in your business, is to make money or hit specific KPIs and specific goals and specific targets, and that is what the primary focus is, everything becomes secondary to achieving that goal. Which means on a subconscious level, you are always making decisions aligned with how it will affect the company's bottom line or profit or conversions, whatever it is, which then leads downstream to making compromised decisions which are not aligned with who you are and what you want to do, which means you lose integrity. And the more that this happens, the more small compromised decisions that you make over longer periods of time is essentially where you become misaligned and disillusioned and burned out and stressed and whatnot, which is precisely what I experienced and what I felt after I had achieved a financial goal of some degree of security. And that's when I started my quest to find meaning and purpose in the work that I did. And it was impossible to find meaning and purpose in my work where the guiding principle was making money. Because if you are financially secure and you have enough money month to month, what really is the difference between making, say, 5,000 a month and 10,000 a month, just as an example, if your living expenses would be 2,000 a month? Well, not much, to be honest with you, because at the time I justified wanting to make more money and having money as the primary targets what I aim for, because I wanted more, quote, freedom and lifestyle. But the reality was that I was already living the life what I wanted. And all of the things that I would imagine myself wanting in the future, if I wanted to, I could do it in the present moment, but I chose not to. And so I set money as my North Star, as a way to pursue this vision of utopia in my mind of what my life would be like in the future. And that's what motivates me to go forward. But the reality is that I could live it in the present if I chose to do so. So what makes me think, if I'm being honest, that I would do all of those things in the future when I have more money and more responsibilities? Wouldn't I probably just follow the same pattern as everybody else, that the more money they make in their company, the more beholden they are to the company, the more it takes up the time, the more they have to do the decisions, the more involved they are, which means they have less time, less free time to do the things that they want. It's a bit of a contradiction, to be honest with you, but that's what it is. For me, maybe you're different, maybe other people are different, but for me, it's not. I tried my hardest to find meaning and purpose in what I did, but I couldn't. And I tried to, this was back as an atheist, and from the atheist perspective, you find meaning and purpose in things because you attach that meaning and purpose into the things that you do. And I tried my hardest to do it, but it didn't work. And after thinking deeply about it, I think the reason is because if you subjectively try to attach meaning to something, it's relative. If you, as an individual human, tries to create meaning in something that you do, it is subjective to you, your life, your experience, your perception of the world, and it's relative. Which means, relative means it changes. And so, if something changes, how can you anchor yourself to it to make sure that your decisions in the present moment align with what the true purpose behind what it is that you're doing is? If that makes sense. And the answer is, from my experience, you can't. And this is why I think I committed a lot of my sins in business based on the transactional thinking, because my North Star was money for the reason, and I wanted to make more money for this subjective, relative, vague concept of what I wanted in the future. But it kept changing. My North Star kept moving. Which means when I drifted, I had nothing to recalibrate myself back to. Which means fundamentally, everything that I did, everything I pursued was based on something that is not stable. It's not anchored in something. It moves. And as such, I did not have a solid anchor. I thought I did, but I didn't. Because I could not trust 100% in anything that I did, because it wasn't a solid anchor. And deep down I think I knew it, because I was inventing the idea of what I want to anchor into. The point I'm trying to make is that because I had no solid anchor, it means that I ended up making decisions based on my emotions. And I do not trust my emotions. Emotions are fleeting. Emotions come and go. One day you feel on top of the world, like you can conquer everything, you're going to achieve all of these things. The next day you don't want to get out of bed thinking you're a complete failure. Which is true. The actual situation that you're in does not change. It's just the way that you feel about it. Feelings are fleeting, feelings are based on a whole bunch of factors that are outside of your control, and the way you perceive a situation is different depending on different times of the day and different feelings. And if you had a bad night's sleep, you're going to perceive a situation differently. And that's exactly what I did, if I'm being honest with you. And because there was no anchor, I had no idea that the decisions I'm making in the present moment and my reactions in the present moment to bad situations, I just reacted on emotions. And I justified it by saying, well, this is what I'm trying to achieve in the business. This situation is contrary to what I'm trying to achieve, and therefore, no, I explode with anger and all these variety of things. And so, examples were, first of all, a personal example was in the past, in my former agency, I had a woman working with me from the Philippines. She had a daughter, and I actually really liked her. She was great. Diligent, done all the work, and when the company wasn't making money, and it wasn't making money consistently, and nothing we tried worked, I got stressed out, and I couldn't afford to keep paying her the fee that I was paying her, because she was supposed to be managing LinkedIn, and there was nothing coming from LinkedIn, and it was just a nightmare. And then once I found that someone had been using my premium pro version, paid version of ChatGPT to basically research and service other clients. And in particular, one of the chats was something that was a complete 180 degree to what my own philosophy and what my own values were. And I got upset. And I fired her in quite a harsh way for what she did. Even though in hindsight, I'm not even 100% sure it was her that did it. And I perceive that situation to be a personal attack. I perceive the situation to be that they were taking advantage of me, that they own, and I don't think they were deliberately taking advantage of me, but they only viewed working for me with my former agency as a means to an end, in order to get their $7 an hour or whatever it is, what I paid them back then. They did not buy into the mission, the vision, what I wanted to do with the company, well, and neither did I, because it was not anchored in anything. And all of the bad things that was happening to me, I just exploded and took it out on her. And afterwards, the reality of the situation is that if I'm honest with myself, and I look back and try to pinpoint a point in the business in my former agency where everything just fell off a cliff, it was that moment when I fired her. I tried to make things better afterwards by kind of, I paid her for 10 days afterwards as like a severance pay. I changed the reason why I fired her within the company and said she's not being fired, that we were letting her go because of cost regions and all of these things, but the damage had already been done. And I really regret that, because if I look back at it in hindsight, I caused so much damage to her as an individual, and she was probably extremely upset by it. She probably then took it out on a kid, who the kid's name was Luna, and took it out on her husband and all of these things, and it was just really, really bad. And I tried to make up for it afterwards, but what could you do when the damage is done? Especially when enough time has passed, and they more likely than not, there was no malice involved, but I perceived malice. It was them likely, she was likely, if it was her, she was likely was logged into my paid version of ChatGPT and forgot to log out and go into her own one, which, let's be honest, is an honest mistake. You know, but I handled it badly. I handled it in the worst possible way, and I really, really regret it to this day. And reliving the pain of that, well, especially when I think about the ramifications that it had for her and her family afterwards, it just kills me inside. And I look at it and think how insane it was for me to do that. But of course, the reason is because I was reacting on emotion. I misread the situation. I invented scenarios in my own mind which were not true because of the things in the company were not going the way they were supposed to. All of the stress and all of the hassle and all of this stuff. And I just lost it and thought it was rational. And so I'm no saint. I've committed all of these sins before, and fortunately I found a solution to it, or at least one kind of one solution for me, and that is with the L.I.G.H.T framework that I've developed. And what L.I.G.H.T is, it's a system to enable you to make your decisions based on the pursuit of Christ-likeness in everything that you do. And the reason for this is I only understood this after becoming a Christian and really studying Christianity for more than 12 months, thinking deeply on it, you know, so much study and learning to understand this, why Christianity, one, is true, and two, why the L.I.G.H.T framework is so critically important. And that is because the pursuit of Christ-likeness is basically what Christians are called to do. And the pursuit of Christ-likeness gives us a framework on the way to live our lives. But because of humans, we sin, we aren't perfect. Christ-likeness and trying to become like Jesus is an impossible task because we are humans. Jesus was sinless and therefore perfect. Interestingly, the word sin actually originates as an archery term with the arrows, and I think it literally means that the arrow falls short of the target, which is a fascinating analogy when you think of what sin means in the biblical context, that you fail to achieve the target of becoming like Jesus. And this isn't just philosophical, because why do we need that? Well, first of all, why do we need Jesus, Christianity and God is a bigger question, and why do we need to apply it in our business? And I'm going to tie everything up through this here, this analogy, this example here. And so, God created the universe. God is timeless, universal, eternal. What does that mean? It means that God is the same as it was in the past, the present, and will be in the future. God is unchanging. Why? What does it mean to pursue Christ-likeness? Why is it important? Well, if you look through the scriptures and the books of the Bible, we can date some of the earliest Gospels back to within pretty close to when Jesus was around. And I think the oldest Bible that we've got, is it something Leviticus or something? Oh, I forget the name, but it's a big, massive book like that. And I think it's from sort of AD 330 or whatever it is. So 300 years after Jesus, around the time of Constantine and when they had that sort of meeting I forgot what it was called now, the Council of Nicosia or something, is it? Where they, anyway, point being is that this book, this Bible, is 1700 years old, written in Greek, and if you translate the Greek, it reads the same as what's in the Bible, in your Bible today in 2026. Apart from a few minor variances, the meaning is the same. And that means the meaning and the written text is the same 1700 years ago to what it is now. The Dead Sea Scrolls are the same, which have various books like the Isaiah Scrolls, which date back to several hundred years before Jesus, so 2,500 years old or whatever it is, and they match pretty much word for word with what we have written in our Bible today. What does that mean? It means that it's the same. It's timeless. It's universal. It applies 2,500 years ago. It applies today. It will apply 2,500 years in the future. This is what we need as our solid anchor. Because we need to have an anchor in something that doesn't change. It's universal to every situation that we're in. It's something that will not change. It's something that if I'm in a situation like I was with the person on my team before, where I allowed my emotions to react because of my perception of the business at the time, I would be able to stop and put the situation into perspective by anchoring my situation to something timeless, eternal, and universal. And then looking at it through that lens, it tells you the way to react subconsciously. And that is not to react on your emotions. Because your emotions come and go, they're fleeting, they're based on whims, you can't trust your emotions. But you can trust something that was the same 2,500 years ago, today, and will be the same 2,500 years in the future. That's why you need to have that anchor. It's rooting your decisions, your identity, everything you do in God and the pursuit of Christ-likeness it reminds me of something Dennis Prager said. And Dennis Prager, he's got his own radio show for decades and decades, written countless books, and he's the founder of the Prager University, which is teaching kids sort of Judeo-Christian values and conservative values and different things. Something that he said, and that was that someone once asked him, a mathematician once asked him at university, what is the definition of God? Because he was an atheist. And the response was, God, by Dennis Prager. So this is his quote: God is the only absolute in a universe full of relativities. And so that means if you've got the Holy Trinity, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit in the same, it means Jesus is the only absolute in a universe full of relativities. Which means the pursuit of Christ-likeness is the only absolute in a universe full of relativities. And that's why we need it. Light is a framework to pursue Christ-likeness. It allows us to anchor in the absolute, in something that does not change, which means that every time we act and make a decision, we have faith and confidence and trust that we are doing so in a way that aligns with our ultimate values and with the absolute truth. This is what gives us confidence that what we are doing is correct. It's what gives us the confidence to make decisions that may go against our own short-term self-interests and short-term whims and short-term desires in the pursuit of something that is long-term, because we can anchor it in an absolute. And no matter how far we drift or how far we go away or are misaligned, we can always stop, reevaluate the situation, in comparison to an absolute that doesn't change, and we can instantly reorient ourselves and start making our way back to where we're supposed to go. Without it, you basically become like I was. All my decisions and everything are based on something that is relative, and therefore it always changes, and therefore it leads to you making and justifying decisions based on your emotions, whether it's your emotions of anger and greed and love of money, and or even hedonism, as you can just see in popular culture, which is what we're moving towards. Having an absolute allows you to make these decisions rooted in something that is transcendent to you, and this aligns everything you do in your life, your business and finances with your faith. This is how you can integrate your Christian values into your business, and this is how you can operate your business in a transactional world, because having the pursuit of Christ-likeness as your ultimate aim, your business vision and your business goals and your business KPIs and your profit and your bottom line and all of these things are secondary to the pursuit of Christ-likeness. Why? Well, Christ-likeness is an absolute. Your business revenue and bottom line is relative and changing. And of course it is, because your projections and what you're aiming for on a quarterly or annual basis changes. Instead, you want to anchor it in something that is transcendent. And then it's just as Matthew 6:33 says, which is, seek first his kingdom and righteousness, and all of these things shall follow. And that has personally been the experience of my life, if I reflect back and look at things in the two examples that I gave earlier, where the relationship is transactional, but yet first of all, I was fired from my contract for something that was not my fault, because my performance was measured in alignment with their bottom line, and I managed to turn that contract around where I would get 50% of my fee for 80% less work, so I earn more per unit of time. The second example of when I did the right thing in this situation, of having integrity, of not giving a client deliverables and charging him a fee when he's not going to use it. This was a sacrifice in the short term because I got nothing from it, but as a result of that, I was then motivated and inspired at a later date to contact him again to ask him about what it's like to fly with a baby, and he said, easy, do it. And then my parents paid for our flights back for the family to come back, which was more than the outstanding balance. So in both of those occasions, by me seeking first his kingdom and righteousness, and these things shall follow, even though I did not consciously know I was doing it, the outcome for me was better as a result of it. So that is basically it, and how I've tried to tie everything together. That's my story of what it was like for me in the transactional sense with light, and why light is so important. And this is why I'm so passionate now about trying to build a movement to help businesses at all, Christian businesses at all levels of revenue and influence, to introduce light in their business as this solid anchor, your foundation, your absolute, so you can anchor all your decisions and actions in the pursuit of Christ-likeness. And then you can introduce this framework into your company so that all of your employees and people down the chain can make decisions on your behalf, and you know with confidence that they're doing it in a way that's consistent with your values as a Christian and your business vision rooted in your eternal vision of the pursuit of Christ-likeness. And then you can steward your influence through your marketing, your sales, the way you help customers and clients, and you can make every touch point in your business as an opportunity to reflect Jesus' character in your actions and the way you treat and serve people. And then you're planting seeds, you're stewarding your influence, and you will multiply your impact as a way of doing it. And the best part, by doing so, Matthew 6:33, seek first his kingdom and righteousness, and all these things will follow. And you will find that you will have better relationships internally, you'll have better relationships with your customers and clients, and people buy from those they know, like, and trust. And the stronger the relationships you have, the deeper the connections you have with your customers and clients, the more they're going to buy from you, the longer retention rates you're going to have, the more referrals that they're going to bring towards you. And that is basically it. That's all. If anyone's watched to the end, I'm genuinely shocked and surprised. But hey, I'm doing this to understand light on a deeper level. See you next time.